Um, Today's event is the last session of our Technopreneur series. Just like previous events, today we are having another heavyweight to be our featured speaker. He's an entrepreneur par excellence, a business strategist, and four-term member of parliament. Yes, he's Professor Inderjit. Today, we are excited to have him to be our guest to share his 30 years entrepreneurship journey. I believe there's so much to share, so without further ado, I will just leave the rest of the time to him. And everyone, if you have any questions to Inderjit or to Ies INCA, please feel free to type in the chat box. But first of all, as usual, we will have Mr. Andy Wee, the General Manager of IES INCA, to give us a brief introduction about IES INCA and SG Founder Program. Now let's get started. Over to Andy.
So good evening, everybody, and good evening to fellow IES members. Welcome to this evening session, and we are very delighted to have Professor Inderjit to share his time with us. And I'm sure you learn a lot from his experience as well as an entrepreneur. Okay, so let me do a very brief introduction of IES and IES INCA to introduce what we do. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So for those who are new to us, IES stands for Institution of Engineers Singapore. We are the national body for engineers, and our IES mission is to promote science, art, and professional engineering to, for the well-being of mankind. The vision of IES is to be the heart and voice of engineers and to represent engineers in Singapore. Yeah. I'm sure there are many engineers here and many members here, so you're familiar. Okay, this is our current new council for IES, headed by Dr. Richard Kwok, who is the new president that's leading us. Okay, yeah, okay, I'll skip through some slides. So now let me introduce IES INCA. IES INCA stands for Incubator Accelerator. Our mission is really to support science, technology, engineering ventures in engineering translation, accelerating products to market, while meeting the milestones, and to help engineers, technopreneurs who are scaling up their business, and to also build a vibrant engineering venture community, that will transform life through their innovation and technology. Okay, that's the work of IES INCA. And the USP of IES INCA, we are linked to the largest network of engineers, body of engineers, and IES has members in both the government, private sector, and also academic circles. So IES as a hub, we link various parties in the engineering space, from universities to polytechnics to research institutes and also to industry. And our focus is really to help engineers who want to build companies and engage in entrepreneurship to be guided from the experience of our mentors and our network. Yeah. Okay. Oops, sorry, I need to restart this. Sorry, let me just restart my PowerPoint. Having a little bit of problem here. Okay, minute. Sorry, a bit of technical issue here. I will continue my part a bit later. Maybe we can go back to let Professor Inderjit share first, then come back to our introduction. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, then shall we move on to Inderjit first? Over to you, Professor Inderjit.
Yes, I'm here. Let me share my slide. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining this session. Andy has been quite persistent in asking me to do this. I'm happy to do this, being an engineer myself. Can I just see whether you can see my slides? Can you see this? Is it
Yep.
okay? All right. Yeah. Okay. So there were many things I can talk about. One of the requests was for me to talk about my entrepreneurship journey. So I'm going to talk about my personal story and all the lessons I have learned throughout life. I mean, I didn't know that I was going to be an entrepreneur when I was going through my early years, but some of this did shape my thinking, and so I'll share my story as quickly as possible, and then we can talk a bit about technopreneurship, which all of us are engineers, so we look at that, and then we can have some discussion. All right. I think for me, first of all, entrepreneurship is really a way of life, is a way of thinking. So I teach entrepreneurship now at the university in NTU, and to me, it's a matter of mindset, and that is how you act and behave like an entrepreneur, no matter what you do in life, whether as a family member, whether as working as a teacher, working as a government official, whatever we do, I think we can think like entrepreneurs. So for me, really, it's about that, having the right mindset, the passion and the commitment and the entrepreneurial spirit, the winning spirit to be able to to do things. And whether can creativity be learned or not, in my lecture, in the research done, the research says that you can't teach creativity is not learned, but it can be unlearned, based on research that was done in uh, by some I think Stanford University professors, that you become less and less creative as you get older. But still, I think we can pick up some skills to learn how to do it, and really ability to bounce back, fight back, and so on. So at the end of the day, it's, if let's say we have that kind of a mindset, and especially one that I believe is that as an engineer, that there's no problem that cannot be solved. Any problem that we face, we can solve, and this is how we're operated in life. So I think that's a philosophy that I hope that entrepreneurs should carry with them all along. But one thing I realized that being engineers, having gone through so many rounds, it is not technology alone. It's not just science alone, not just engineering alone that you need, to run a business. Really, you need to have a good business model. You need to understand the industry. You need to understand many more things before you create a good company. And fortunately, I am one of the believers that entrepreneurship can be learned. Many people think that you are born with it. I believe that we can learn and we can, have that. All right. Now let me just go through. Yeah, I presume you can see my slides moving, because sometimes I get stuck down here. Okay. So let me go through right from the beginning, my early years. My father was a watchman, and he did a second job as a bus driver. Those days he joined Hockley Bus, and then he saw the riots in the early days of Singapore. Went on to be, as whole life he did that, but he had a second job as a watchman, and we were lucky. We got a room in the factory. It was a coffee factory near where I stayed down here in Geylang area. And so we grew up for 20 years of my life. I grew up in the factory space, and I did all my schools in neighborhood school. Although I did well enough to go into the so-called elite school, I just decided to go to neighborhood school, closer to home, easier to do it. And some of the things that I learned, these are not the entrepreneur lesson, but in life, I learned the poverty and the impact on society. We started poor. My parents came from India, both no basic education, and along the way they educated us, the next generation, and then we progress in life. Racial harmony, for important for stable society. And later on, I'll link this to in entrepreneurship. Equal opportunities for all, build a strong nation. Education and hard work are the only solution to progress. And so in my whole family, my parents had zero education, but all of my, at least, most of my siblings, we got our university degrees. Okay. Some pictures on the top right, you see that is that one room in the factory that I stayed on. You see, it's a very broken down place with trees growing all over. This towards the end, I was already, and then my primary school pictures and my secondary school pictures down here. Now, what are the entrepreneurial mindset things that I learned down here? First of all, as an entrepreneur, you must always aim for improvement, but understand the reality of failure. So I saw poverty, how, in the whole village that we stayed in, there were so many poor people, we were poor too. And, but of course, you want to continuously improve yourself. And that I think is very important as an entrepreneur. Building a strong and harmonious team, it builds a stronger company. Many a time, in fact, most of the time companies fail because the team end up quarreling with each other, breaking down. So a strong and harmonious team, just like strong and harmonious society, is important for nation building. Same thing company, and give everyone a second chance, and you'll see the result. So we started where we started, and then we had a chance in society, moved on. I started working, in Texas Instrument. I'll talk about later on, for 13 years before I went on to start my company. Of course, there's no shortcut to success. Anything in life, you have to work very hard. It's a basic ingredient of a successful entrepreneur. And you must have the hunger in you to survive. And so, given the background that we came from, that was very important for us. Then, I had my first pioneering experience. So thinking like entrepreneur when I went to my junior college, although, I could have gone to a better JC, but Temasek was very near my house. And so I decided to join Temasek. And I was a first batch, 1997, 77, 78. And I was a hockey captain. I was a long distance athlete. In one of my races in school, I was cheated of my victory in one of the races. And I was so determined to win it that I went on to train. And then, 6 months later, I beat whoever who had stolen the victory from me by one round, 5,000 meters one round. And so what were the entrepreneurial lessons I learned as an athlete, as an entrepreneur, as a pioneer, and as a hockey captain was endurance is essential to complete the race. And later on, I'll talk a bit about a marathon that I did at the age of 45. Now, pioneering spirit is the same as entrepreneurship. So you start something from nothing and you create something big. And that's what we did in Temasek JC. Finding clarity amid uncertainty, use whatever resources you have. And we had nothing down there. We had no library, no aircon. We had a library, no aircon in the library. We had no plants. We planted the plants. We built our own hockey pitch and so on. So, it's a lot of uncertainty, but whatever resources you have, you create something. And at first you feel pick yourself, I work harder, and this is how I won back my race that was taken away from me. And you must remain focused on your goal. Never lose focus on your goal, because there'll be many obstacles that come along. So these are the entrepreneurial lessons that I learned when I was in JC. Okay. Then I did my national service. I was fortunate enough to go for the 10-month officer cadet course. Those days, we used to go straight to do the officer cadet if you get selected. And, then I went to do Ahmad Recce, another 6 months of training. It was one of the toughest conversion courses. And then when I went on to do my reservists in later years after my university education, I did not work with the same people who were in my platoon, but I had to take a completely new team, and I learned many things from there. And, and one of the important lessons I learned, entrepreneurial lessons I learned in the army, is that you have a never say die attitude to reach your goal, and endurance, and endurance is important too. And commitment and sense of duty builds ownership in your company or your country, right? And it's all about mindset. And for mindset, let me just share this story. When I went first day of my when I went to CMPB, that was that time in Holland Road. We went to pick up our army supplies from Kit Hong Camp in Choa Chu Kang, and then we went to Safti, which is where OCS was. First day we went there, we were told to go and change into our PT kit. I could find everything except for my socks. So I came down with my PT kit, but with civilian socks. And the kind of scolding I got from the officer, I never heard that kind of vulgarity for my life, any time in my life before that. It was such a terrible thing. And I started at the wrong footing. I hated my military training. And guess what? Because I hated because of this attitude problem, I didn't like it. And, I really was performed very badly. I was last in my platoon, among the last in my platoon. Until one day, 5 of us were charged for dirty rifle. Not our fault, but I won't share why. And we were punished. So everyone went back home. And going back home and during the military training is very important. But we did not have the chance to go home. So every hour had to report to the guard house for punishment. And so while sitting on my bed over the weekend, not getting a chance to go home, I cried. I was like 18 years old and I cried. And then something told me, I'm going to do this for 2.5 years. I either enjoy it or I hate it. If I hate it, I'm going to suffer. And I better enjoy it and then make the best of it. That moment was a turning point in my life. So it's mindset, mind over matter. With that attitude, I basically started enjoying my military training, no matter how tough it was. And OCS was really tough those days. And, uh, and I became from the last few in the platoon to the top in my platoon. Just a matter of mindset. So it's all about mindset, and this is something that I learned while in the army. It's tough, and you must have a survival mentality to survive this journey of entrepreneurship. And of course, leadership experience is important. Earning respect from the team is very important, and this relates to what I learned during my reservist. When I took a group of reservist people who were not from my former platoon, and they did not know me, I did not know them. So we were supposed to conduct an attack, dismount from our tanks and go and do an attack. And I signaled my platoon to come and join me for the attack. They all act blur and they looked the other way. They did not join me. And so, I had to do it. So I went over and I told them off and I told them, you either follow me, it's your job, you come with me. Over time, I basically knew that I cannot just order them, but I had to earn their respect of my team members, and which I did. And so actually I did very well in my reservice also. So leadership is not about expecting people to respect you, but you must earn the respect. And similarly in an entrepreneurial team, it's important that you lead by example and you gain the respect. I don't share this at all with people, but I share you some of my OCS pictures, and then later on bottom when I was in Ahmad Reki, with one of my friends. Top right is when I did my conversion course. Left is OCS junior term. Then I had another pioneering experience. I went to join NTI. I was in NUS, did my engineering in NUS in 1982, 81. I entered after my NS. And at that time, there was no such thing as NTI or NTU. We joined engineering NUS. Halfway through, the government announced that 75% of us will have to go to NTU or NTI at that time, and the 25% will stay back in NUS. So we had a choice. My choice was to do a course that I liked. It does not matter whether NUS, NTU. So I decided to choose I did electrical engineering. And so I chose to go to NTU. So that was another pioneering experience. With the first batch, there were no students union, there were no student club, there was nothing. We were the guinea pigs of the curriculum, and so I did we did all of the things. So I started the students union. I was a student union council chairman. I started a Triple E club. I started a number of clubs and so on. So that was another pioneering experience. And so we started something from scratch. And guess what? When we started those days, no one, even Cham Tao Soon, who was our president, did not believe that we will ever make it. He told us many years later when we celebrated our 25th anniversary of our graduation. But guess what? Today NTU is a top 20 in the world. Came from nowhere and there it is. And so we all built the foundation and it's got to this part. And what this means is that initial planning is very important for us to create long-lasting, institutions and companies. And serving others, I was a student leader, but was serving others as a servant leader, earned through respect by being hands-on and doing it yourself. Continuous improvement will build stronger institutions. And I just want to share this story now. At the age of 45, NTU was celebrating 50 years of NANTA, and then I think 20 years of NTU or NTI. And they wanted to do an ultra marathon, 4 marathons around Singapore. And they wanted to have key runners, one from NANTA, one from NTI, one from NTU, one from NIE to represent. And then we had a relay of many other runners along. So we were asked to at least complete 1 marathon. And so, by the way, I was the least fit in my life at that time at the age of 45 because politics had taken my fitness away. I was a long distance runner, but I had not trained. But when they could not find someone to represent NTI, so I volunteered and I took about 4 months to train for marathon from zero, completely unfit. I lost 10 kgs. I started running and I could do 21 kilometers. And when the day came, that's all I could train. I thought if I can do 21, the next 21 should be easy. Boy, was I mistaken. I went on the race day. I went to the 30-kilometer point. Then I signaled that I was going to give up. There were people who were following me and I said, can you please signal to the controller that I'm giving up? Within a minute, I changed my mind. I said to myself, to give up is very easy, but to finish is something very special. And I'm going to finish this race, even if I have to crawl all the way. And that's what I did. I finished the whole race. Took me 7 hours plus to finish one marathon. Never did it in my life. Almost died because I had heart palpitation the last 5 kilometers. But it was mindset again, mind over matter. So don't give up at the first sign of obstacle or difficulty that you face. So I'm sharing some of this life lesson that helped me contributed to my entrepreneurship journey later on. Some pictures from NTI. That's when I was in my third year. We were doing some project and it came out in the papers. Lee Biwa and I she was doing civil engineering. I did electrical engineering. We continue to organize our class gatherings every year. And some of the entrepreneurial lessons that I learned from NTU was, you must have clear vision when there's uncertainty. And you need a good plan to guide your journey. Plan must not be rigid because we modified many things as NTI started. Whatever was original curriculum had to be changed. Whatever was the original system had to be changed. So similarly, when you start a company, you start a business plan, don't take it as a very rigid plan. It must be a living document and you must be able to modify the plan as you go. You have to be committed 24/7 if you want to succeed in your company. And building a company is like marathon. You need hard work and perseverance. I described my marathon experience. It's very tough, but you must have that mindset. It's a long journey. It's not overnight success. And of course, to overcome the difficulties you face in such a journey, you must have that passion to go and do it. So then after I graduated from NTU, I went to join Texas Instrument. I did 13 years down there. I did many things. As I said, I was such that there was no problem that cannot be solved, and I was a problem solver in the company. I did many things, but among many things, there's one thing that I discovered that I thought I could do. A company was losing money. We were in the memory division, and I came up with an idea based on the rack and bone men. Some of these people we call a Karanguni men. They wear Rolex watches and they drive big cars, and they make money out of trash. So I thought that if I could recover all the rejects, DRAMs that we were throwing away, and make it into something useful, that could make money for the company. I came up with a project proposal in our quarterly meeting with our global management team. About 2/3 of the room laughed at me. It's a stupid idea. It's not going to work. But I thought, for example, if let's say a 4 meg DRAM fails, it fails on one bit, we throw away the whole thing. If I can reconfigure and put it on a board and make a left 4 meg into a 2 meg and a right 4 meg into a 2 meg, I put two together, that becomes a 4 meg, but now on a board. And you can still use it in computers. And guess what? In Texas Instrument, we were testing DRAMs to apply to military and space technology, 20-25 years of life. But computers change every 3 to 5 years. So if I could come up with a different spec and label it differently, I could use it for computer by testing it less stringently. So these were the ideas that came to my mind, and I proposed to my management that I can create a $100 million business at 80% profit margin. So they all laughed at me. Luckily, there was one very senior manager, a Japanese guy, who saw some value in what I said. He gave me the opportunity. He said, okay, tell me what you need. I spent 3 weeks traveling all around the world of our Texas Instrument factory to see what we were throwing away. And I came back and I started the project. By the third year, it was not 100 million, but it was $230 million revenue business at 90% profit margin of converting all the rejects into something useful. So you can create a business like thinking like an entrepreneur, even in a big company like this that I worked on. I did 13 years in TI, Texas Instrument, and I saw an opportunity of the outsourced semiconductor assembly and test industry. It was still early days. There were some players, but I saw a huge opportunity of this growing. And I decided to leave my job at the peak of my career. I was director of operations. The management was very upset. But anyway, I saw the opportunity, I left. So in 98, I started UTech. This, I would say, I managed to raise, I could not find any money in Singapore. I raised $138 million from, first I raised 100 million from Taiwanese investors. I went to Taiwan, made one presentation, and I got the Taiwanese excited about this company. I got more than 100 million commitment. When I got a commitment, I came back, then I managed to interest people like UOB, Temasek, and so on, then to also put in. On their own, they did not believe in me. After the Taiwanese put in the 100 million, then they started putting in the money just to follow. So I raised 138 million. It was a record of sorts at that time. This is just one seed stage. And guess what? By that May 98, I formed my team. I put the money in. By January 99, first quarter, by January, I was already revenue positive, 4 million per quarter at 25%. And by end of 2000, I had 32 blue chip customers, Broadcom, Siemens, Fujitsu, big names. And by end of 2000, we got NASDAQ and SGX approval. So I was going to go IPO by end of 2000. As we were about to go many things happened. April 2001 came, dot-com crash, we abandoned the IPO. But anyway, this is a unicorn that I created. Subsequently went on to be listed in Singapore Stock Exchange. Was market cap a few $1 billion, and then it got delisted along the way. You see in this picture on top the logo that I created, and then below is a current logo. The new management team changed the logo, but that's the first founding logo of. So that is 98. In fact, in 97, my brothers and I started another company. We do business in Africa. We're probably the only Singapore company that does business in 38 countries in Africa. We started by distributing consumer electronic products, but currently we have a supply chain in many of these countries, and we are able to supply many things that come along. And by 2014, we had a total revenue of about $400 million. This was not VC funded, was completely funded from our own family, whatever money we had in our saving and bank loans. I put my house as a mortgage to get the money. Otherwise, the banks are not willing to lend. I took a lot of risk, but then we created quite a good business. 2014, that's not 2104, 2014. Oil crisis hit, and we lost a lot of money. 2015 to 2019, we were focusing on getting out of tough time, and we did come out of it. 2020, we were doing well until guess what? COVID came, and now we are again struggling to try to come out. I think we'll come out of it, but it's tough. After I left UTech, I started another company, Infinity Solution, a semiconductor services prototyping company based in Silicon Valley, HQ in Singapore. I had two operations in Santa Clara, San Jose in Silicon Valley, a mass production facility in Philippines, test lab in Austin, and two design centers in India. This one I did differently. I raised $36 million. In 2004, we had NASDAQ approval for IPO. We aborted the IPO because we went through another financial crisis, and then I exited this company via a trade sale. Solstar, I'll not go through. Solstar is a Singapore brand of consumer electronic product that we sell in Africa. Using our Africa experience, we actually have gained a lot of ground in Africa, and sometime in some countries, I can even beat LG or Samsung in some of the products in just after 10 years of presence. Okay. So what are the entrepreneurial lessons that I learned in all my companies? In TI, problem solving, I believe, and I still believe today, there's no problem in life that cannot be solved. The outcome may be different, but we can be solved. My startup experience, the DRAMs that I used to recover, I call that the Silicon Salvage Project. You can think like an entrepreneur no matter what you do in life. Running a global company is important right from day one. Okay, so I was actually in Texas Instruments. I was lucky enough to be managing a global operation. We were doing assembly tests for global operation. I was running it. So it's important for us to think global right from day one. My other companies that I started, UTech, when I started in 90s, I was planning it 95, 96, and then 97, I was ready to start. The semiconductor industry was going through a lot of problems. In fact, most of the industries were getting into trouble. When I started in 98, if you all remember, Micropolis was Singapore technology-owned company, went bankrupt, and the Micropolis building became available. I went on to buy it for UTech actually at a cheap price because they were liquidating, and I had the money, so I went to buy it. So many people told me I was stupid to start a company, leaving TI and starting a company at that time. But it's a question of whether you see the cup half full or half empty. Whether you see opportunities, well, others see fail. I saw an opportunity and I was not wrong. It became very successful. TriStar, my African company, is an opportunity which we started in 97. What was happening in 97? The Asian financial crisis. We survived that and we are continuing to survive. People thought we were silly. We did it and we made it work. So it's a half full, half empty. One of the important lessons I learned is that many entrepreneurs fail because they think an idea is enough. The transforming of an idea to the business part is the toughest portion. You can have an idea, but many fail to innovate and make it into a business model, a business that can work. And that's the toughest one. And that's why many people fail based on my experience. And therefore, all my startups that I do, I focus on this portion. Is it really there? Can it really be done? Is there a model? Do we have a team? So I look at this kind of things. And many of the things, by the way, I wrote in a book that I wrote in 07. I'm about to republish it very soon. And the day you start your company is the day the business plan become outdated. So you need continuous changes. Innovation is about creative ways to overcoming obstacles that you face. It's about doing something using your creativity to solve problems. And in every startup that I did, whether also in Texas Instrument, it was a question of a kind of team that we had. By end of 1997, Texas Instrument, when I was running as a director of operation, achieved the highest record performance in their history in Singapore. And I was very happy to live at the peak at that time. I had a good team. So team is very important. You need a cohesive team. And this cohesive team, by the way, followed me to UTech, followed me to Infinity Solutions, my other companies. Then I joined politics in December 96. These are pictures of my first and last elections. I decided to step down. Although PM wanted me to do another round, I thought I had enough. I done enough for the country. Uh, so you can read this yourself. I just say that, I was more opposition than opposition in parliament at that time. What are the entrepreneurial lessons that I learned down here? Networking is important. I did many things because I connected well with all cross sections, whether they are my residents of all backgrounds, or whether it's a prime minister, or whether it's very important that you have networking at all levels to know what's happening so that you can do a lot of things. Default no is the easiest way out to build complacency, and I face this with many government officials. Every time you see them, they say no, it cannot be done. That's called a default no versus let me see how I can make it happen. And we must always challenge the convention. Although I faced a lot of obstacles, I faced a lot of pushback, I got a lot of scolding from ministers, from prime minister and so on. I never gave up because I challenged the conventional. I believed in it and I went to challenge. So never give up. It's the only way for you to create impactful change. You must be persistent. Nothing will last forever. Many civil servants like to believe that policy should be there forever. It is wrong. Keep your ears close to the ground, to your customers, listen to them, listen to your residents, and you can solve many problems. Okay, I will quickly go through some of the pictures. I did many things in many areas of policies. I faced a lot of difficulty when I started my companies. I wanted to change the landscape, and that's what I spent my 20 years in Parliament, helping startups, helping SMEs, trying to transform the environment. And we made some headway, not completely 100% successful, but we made some headway. This thing I'm going to go quickly. While I was in politics, I also did many things. You can see I was in so many committees, doing so much. I was starting my companies. I was in politics, and I was doing a whole bunch of things. At the end of the day, you want to be a successful entrepreneur, you must have the ability to multitask. I could do many of these things. I have many more committees. I did not put all down here, but it worked. It was tough, sacrifice a bit of family time, sometimes sacrifice a bit of career, but it works. I'm involved currently a lot at a global level to bring what I've managed to do in Singapore into the global environment. So I'm co-president of World Entrepreneurship Forum. It's a bit quiet right now, but we'll come back again. I'm a board member of the World Business Angel Forum, and I also head up a few committees and so on. That's me giving award to Mr. Draper in a couple of years ago, the World Entrepreneurship Award. So, I do all of this thing. And one of the things I learned is that the world is changing faster than we think. And I worry for Singapore. And I worry for Singaporeans because we think we are great. We think we have progressed so much. We are the best country and so on. But the whole world is moving fast. China, of course, we cannot compare. It's a big country. But Southeast Asia, I went to so many cities. Southeast Asia is on the move. In 10 years' time, if you're not careful, many will overtake us. Cities, not countries, but cities. I go to Europe. Some of the cities that we think are old and slow have transformed and they're moving very fast. So through my international engagement, I've seen that the world is moving, and I worry about Singapore. We have to move faster than what we think we should move. All right. Now let me, in the last part, that's my experience. I'm going to talk a bit about what are the things that you need to do as engineers. You want to start a company, as entrepreneurs, what you need to do. These are some of the ingredients that must exist if you want to create a successful business. First of all, innovation. It must be a unique value proposition, different from others. Is it a need or a want? Are you coming up with something that meets what the customer wants? Most of the time, we think that we have a good technology and the world will use it. And most of the time, we fail down there. And there's a story that I'll share about one of those classic failures on our part. And you must also see whether is there a business model that works for the technology that you have. Scalability is also another very important thing. Next, in fact, more important is the team. One person alone may not be able to do it. If you want to get serious investors, you must make sure that you have a good team, integrated team, a diversified team. Investors rather invest in a poor idea with a good team than a good team, than a poor team with a good idea. Investors will put money in good team even the idea is poor because they believe that the team can transform the idea. So remember, you must build a good team if you want to attract investors to invest in you. If you want to be successful also, all right? Money is important. I face a lot of difficulties. I tried to change the environment. I think it's better in Singapore now. I dare say that if you have a great idea and a great team, money will find you. All right. So I think we are getting better, but this always a problem. And of course, customers, if they don't not there, then it's not worth starting the business at all. So these are the important ingredients that must exist. In the book, I wrote a book that I wrote on, it's called Art and Science of Entrepreneurship. I talk about your stars must be aligned, and I talk about the star opportunity of the team and of the capital of the finance, right? So this so you must look out for these ingredients if you want to create a successful startup. All right. Now, so I mentioned it is not just technological innovation, but business model innovation is also important. And many engineers especially fail in this area. They think they have a great technology and they think that they can make it work. And and I want to share the example of the Apple iPod versus Creative Zen. Those a bit older will know that actually digital music was actually invented by creative technology, Simon Hu, and he had the first product was a Zen. It was a technologically superior product compared to the Apple iPod. Guess what? Apple copied creative technology, and but Apple had great user experience, had great user interface. They knew the customer. They produced a product that fitted to the customer need and the market need. Whereas creative produced a very highly technological, superior product, thinking that the market will want it, but market did not take it. So in the whole battle of digital music, creative lost, Apple won. iPod became big. Today, iPod is in your phone. And many years later, Apple had to pay royalty to creative technology for copying the creative technology down here. All right. So it's really not just the technology, but the business model and also marketing and interface. And this is one thing that many of us are very weak in, is in our ability to innovate, in a market to get to the customers. That is one of the weaknesses we have in this part of the world. So when you are, thinking of starting a product based on some technology that you have, these are some of the questions that you must ask yourself. Intellectual property, have you protected it? Is it designed for manufacturing? Can the product be easily manufactured? Form factor, will it work? I mean, smaller, better. The qualification process, yields, reliability, manufacturing techniques, capital and variable costs, and time to market. I mean, you can do so much of engineering and it takes years to go, it's too late. Someone else will catch up with you. But that's not enough. That engineering alone is not enough. Can the business model scale? And these are some of the questions that you must ask about whether can the business model scale. So it's not just about engineering, technology, but it's also about these things. How are you going to enter the market? How are you going to grow? How long is it going to take you to win customers? You do it yourself, you outsource. Who are channel partners? So can the business model scale? So think about this also. And this is a saying by Steve Blank: startups don't fail because they lack a product, they fail because they lack customers and a profitable business model. So having a product market fit is one of the most important starting point if you're ready to start a company. Many people forget to do this. They went to spend a lot of time developing the most superior technological product. By the time go to the market did not want it, and they would have spent so much of money and time, someone will overtake them. So please remember this. They fail because lack of customer and a profitable business model. And this is from the famous Steve Jobs. Of course, he did the iPod. Technology is nothing. What is important that you have faith in people, that they are basically good and smart. And if you give them the tools, they'll do wonderful things with them. So people, the team, important, creativity. Okay, and some of the practical consideration when you want to go and start up, there are many ideas, many people around the world doing it. How disruptive is your idea? Have you been talking to your champion or the decision maker of the customer? Are you going to have paid or free customer trials? Are you going to be able to get it? How soon can you receive a purchase order? These are practical consideration beyond the business model and so on that I mentioned earlier. And the common pitfalls, I mentioned this also earlier. Build it and they will come. That means customers will come. Many people fail there. Lack of business model. Many of the dot-com companies, they fail because they thought we'll just spend money to acquire eyeballs, they call it, like customers. Don't worry about earning revenue. We'll think about it later. But that failed. Amazon later on thought about how to get revenue, and today look, they're the biggest company in the world right now, I believe. So lack of business model is another reason people fail. No leadership, no team. I mentioned this many times, and no clear value proposition. That means you are doing something that customers do not really want. And what do investors look for in startup? Team, always number one. Size of market, business model, and the moat. How you're going to protect yourself from others coming into the same area. Technology, innovation, and the scalability, and evidence of customer traction. If you can show some of these things, you'll find investments quite easily. And finally, my last slide. For those of you who are thinking you're not already started, you've got an incubator run by IES. They can help you guide through all the things that I talked about. Seize the opportunity, take that first step. Build only if you believe in it and have the stamina and motivation and fortitude. Remember the marathon story that I talked about. Otherwise, not all engineers, not all scientists can become good entrepreneurs. It's okay. Join the team. Let someone else be the CEO and be the CTO or the techie behind it. And it's always part of a team. I mean, 100% of nothing is very little. So most of our entrepreneurs, especially in Singapore, they refuse to give up share of their company to investors. They refuse to bring in other team members because they want to hold a big share. And this is the same of many of our tauques, SME tauques. They want to have a big share of a small company. Whereas they could have a small share of a very big company, which is worth a lot more than the big share of a small company. So 100% of nothing is very little. So remember, when you're going to do a startup, you know, look at the scale, look at partnering others. Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Inderjit. Andy, you want to share your slides now? Later we'll have the Q&A session.
Okay, I give you all some time to think of some questions. Let me just continue my intro of IES INCA. Yeah, you can enter your questions into the chat. Yeah, and if you like to ask a question live, just raise your hand. Yeah. Okay. So, yeah. Okay, so yeah, I was just briefly sharing about our incubator versus other incubators. Our incubator is really extending from IES, and we are focusing on engineers, engineering, and deep tech. And we're quite different from the rest of the incubators, those that are run by corporate or government linked or university, IHL link or fund link. Our focus is to develop the engineers who are aspiring to be technopreneurs and guide them in this business journey. Okay. So what does IES INCA do exactly? Technology ventures that have done their initial market validation and customer discovery, we help them strengthen their business planning and their structuring, and assign experienced mentors to guide them either in business, in technology development, or in market access. And from these mentors, it's able to help the companies build up a stronger plan, and also link to our IES network. And companies exit incubation with a scalable business plan, the necessary funding, and the resources to go after the market. These are our focus areas for IES INCA. We focus on infrastructure technology, building related materials, processes, and facilities management. We focus on IoT for industrial purpose and smart cities, robotics automation, and clean tech sustainability. Right now, we have 13 incubatees that are with us. And interestingly, some of them cross through different areas as well. And that's where the innovation can happen too. Yeah. Okay. Some of our those companies that have meet this criteria can be incubated with us. Generally, we are looking for companies who have already got MVP, need to scale up, have a market size minimum of 1 million above. The key team member is IES member. Yeah, and you are, as engineers, you're all welcome to join IES and to be actively promoting the growth of engineering. Yeah. Okay. Some of our IES partners that we are working with, Enterprise Singapore is one of the key partners, and IPI, A-Star Accelerate, and also the universities, and also Institute of Singapore Chartered Accountants is one of our key partners that provides finance mentors to guide our incubatees. Under Enterprise Singapore, we are a startup accelerator, as also a startup founder, AMP, accredited mentor program partner. And we have a IES INCA network that has 12.12 million to invest, so that will be able to support the innovations from the engineering team. Okay. Yeah, some of our partners overseas, IES is linked to the ASEAN Federation of Engineering Organizations, where the equivalent of IES is in the other ASEAN countries. So that can be a network that we can access into our neighboring countries to grow the business in the bigger population and markets. Yeah, Singapore has developed in many areas, and we have very good technology that we can bring to these markets to also help them to develop further. Yeah. Okay. On another note, we actually also want to reach out to engineering and technology SMEs. We have this Dare to Transform program, where we have a panel of consultants that can help our local SMEs to do a business review of their business model amidst the dynamic environment and also the globalization. And certainly, if they have need the advice and an independent view of their business, they can approach us by signing up on the link below. And also SMEs that want to spin off, we can also incubate them to go into the market. Yeah. Okay. So a very brief introduction to SG Founder Program. For those of you who are first-time founders, you can utilize this program where you get 1 to 5 matching of the funding from the government. Yeah. Okay. Some of the requirements that you need to meet to be an applicant for this. The team must have at least 3 Singapore citizen or PR members, and at least 2 of the 3 must be first-time entrepreneurs. Yeah, and applicants must hold at least 30%. First-time entrepreneurs must hold at least 30% of the company, and it must have at least 51% Singapore citizen PR holdings. It must be a new company, less than 6 months, and the team members must be actively contributing to this company, not be employed in other areas, other companies. Yeah. Okay. So for more information, you can click on the links that will be in this deck that we will send to you. And just the explanation of how this program works. This is the old amount, which is 30K, but essentially the company comes to us, and as a accredited mentor partner, we can help you to screen your idea, help you to build up these milestones. And once your application is approved by ESG, you get the first tranche of the, now it's 25,000. And within a year, when you complete your milestones, like this example, there's 3 milestones for this fintech company, you'll be disbursed the other half of the SG Founder grant. Okay, so first 25K upon approval, and then next 25K upon meeting the milestones within a year. Okay, yeah. So if you are keen to apply, just write to us. And I want to let you all be aware of this SG Startup Network, where you can really access into investors, incubators, and also mentors. Yeah, do sign up and register yourself there. This is supported by Enterprise Singapore to help to grow the startup ecosystem in Singapore. Yeah. Okay, and you can find many tools in there you can access. Yeah. Okay, in support of the engineers who are thinking of running their business, we, as an incubator, we have also created some courses to help engineers in acquiring new skills. Some of the courses coming up, we have one on critical thinking for technopreneurs. We have another one on understanding and applying business strategy, complex world. We have launched a tech venture successfully, 1.5-day program that helps you to have a very good build up your business model, understanding customer pain points, and be able to structure your company well. And other courses that we have, engineers sometimes struggle to sell. We have this course, sales and venture creation with our partner to help you to gain business skills in selling and building value selling as well. Okay, feel free to register your interest at the link below. Okay, this is my contact, and feel free to reach out to me and link up on our website, Facebook, LinkedIn, to be in touch with our future activities. Now I'd like to Hong Jie, who will host the Q&A with Prof. Inderjit. Yeah, feel free to ask any questions.
Yes, we have quite a few questions in the chat box we can see, but due to the time limit of this event, we will be focusing on the questions that related to entrepreneurship journey and entrepreneurs. So the first question to Professor Inderjit is, how can our system can better support entrepreneurs who embrace failure and want to restart again?
Okay, this has got to do with, I mean, a lot of it is not just the system in of government or education, but also has got to do with society. So I think we have made a lot of progress. In 2003, we started this organization called the Action Community for Entrepreneurship. And the idea here was to do a few things. One is to do real things like, tangible things like improving the financing environment, which I took charge of. Another one talk about education, how to bring entrepreneurship, knowledge about entrepreneurship sharing into the universities, into the schools and so on. And so many entrepreneurs went to the school. The third thing was government, how for the government to change rules and regulation to make it easier rather than stifling entrepreneurship. So we did a lot of that and we made progress. And there's also this organization called the Pro Enterprise Panel that still exists today that looks at how to solve some of the change some of the rules and regulation to make it easy. So I think over the years, we have tried very much to change the culture among society so that, it's possible for people to take the journey, fail, and then restart again. Actually, I want to say that, if you look at the incubators that exist today, you look at Block, 71, and you look at the iRaja, the whole community, and then at all the universities, and we actually have created a very vibrant environment. I've been visiting them quite regularly. And I see that, there is acceptance. People are willing to take the plunge. Many people did not want to do it in the past, but are doing it. So I think we have changed a lot along the way. But there's one very big thing that happened in our education system that maybe some did not notice. When Tharman Shanmugaratnam was the education minister, he did one very big thing. And that is in the past, let's say you went to EM3, you went to normal technical, and then you just continue in that path and you cannot cross over. The big change he did in the education system was to give you more chances, second chances. So you can cross from a normal technical to a normal, from normal to express along the way. So now, as long as we have an education system that allows a student to take different paths, but end up at the end, a bit later maybe. But I think once you have that kind of system, immediately people don't feel so stressed that the system is changed. Now we still place a lot of emphasis on grades, but I think if you notice recently, our leaders have realized that they have to change, and they are thinking about how to change this. It's difficult to change, but they want to emphasize less on grades and more on other things that are useful, to promote entrepreneurship or entrepreneurial thinking. So it's a very difficult thing to do because we are very comfortable. The old system worked very well, and the government want to keep the old system going for as long as possible. But if you don't change soon enough, I think many people overtake us and we'll be in a lot of trouble. So I want to say that we have made progress. But also this society has to make progress also. Parents must allow their children to go and try it out if let's say they want to start as entrepreneurs. And and then we must be willing to do if let's say we have a great idea. So it takes both hands to clap.
Thank you. Next question from G on fresh grads for Professor Inderjit. In your opinion, as a first job out of school, should fresh grads start or work in a startup or work in a large organization or MNC?
Okay. Now, I personally feel these are people, it's a matter of opinion, but if let's say you don't have a great idea yet, so don't join a startup so quickly, unless you think that you can contribute. Because startups, they don't have the luxury of a lot of buffer that they can hire many people, and some people do less, some people do more. They need everyone to contribute. So if you don't have a great idea or you cannot do a big contribution to the startup, then my advice is no. Personally, for me, I spent 13 years in a multinational before I started my company. And if you look at all the statistics, the average age of the very successful entrepreneurs are those who started around 40 years old. All right. So it's okay to start a bit later. And what did I benefit by going to TI? I learned to learn structure. I learned systems so well that when I started my startups, I used that. I could easily translate that into systems in a startup that made it into a longer lasting company. So my advice is, if let's say you don't have a great idea and you cannot do a great contribution to the startup, please take a job in a multinational and learn the system, learn as much as you can. In Texas Instrument, I did 9 jobs in 13 years. So I went to many departments and I learned everything. And when I started my startup, it was very easy for me to go and do it. So starting in a multinational is not a bad idea. But having said that, if you have a world-changing idea and you think that you can help the startup become a real successful company, then go for it. So if you have something great, go for it. If you don't have something great, go and join a bigger company and learn the system.
Then he got this opposite perspective question. Should startups hire fresh grads or wait till they have one to two experience?
Yeah. So you see, just now I mentioned that startups don't have the luxury of hiring, so many people so that one do more wonders. So startups in the initial stage, you're always stretching your money. So startups will actually be looking for people who can contribute directly. So when I started Texas Instruments, all of my key people who came with me were managers for many years, 10 years, 15 years, more, even longer. Okay, and so we could immediately contribute and could start. Along the way, we hired new people, but the people immediately, my core team were people who could immediately contribute based on their experience. So I think so both the other way is the same thing.
Yeah. Okay. We have another question from Sharon. What would you say to a group of youths to encourage them on entrepreneurship journey? Like, where are the opportunities and what are the key skill sets you'd recommend?
Yeah. So I think these days, if you look at the different schools, even in the secondary schools, they have entrepreneurship clubs. If you look at the universities or the polytechnic, they also actually do quite a lot of work in this area, especially the universities. For example, NUS and NTU, we have the overseas entrepreneurship program, where you go and join startups in an overseas for 6 months or a year. But you must be willing to take leave from your studies to go and do this. And I think taking a break like that is not a bad idea. Singaporeans typically want to quickly finish, get their degree, and move on. But if you go to the Western world, they do take breaks along the way. It's okay to take a 1 year break, 2 year break, and then come back and complete a university degree. So I think if you can find an opportunity as a student to look for something like this, join, and learn from this startup attachment that the university have, join the entrepreneur club, and all the universities are now starting, and even the polytechnics, I believe, are starting to offer some form of education where you can gain some skill sets, and from on what it takes to be an entrepreneur. And it's okay if, let's say, you don't want to be an entrepreneur straight away, does not matter. This skill set will be with you, and the day you're ready, you already know what to do. So try to gain all of these things, even if you're not starting the company, starting a company. But this will require a lot of effort on your part. That means, in addition to your studies, you have to stretch yourself and do these extra things that that others may not do. And second thing is, maybe take a break and go and do these attachment programs that will give you more exposure.
Yeah. Okay. Then another question from Louis. When you explore a business opportunity and reach out to potential customers to understand their pains and problems, but without having any specific product to solve those problems, it's hard to gauge their level of commitment for potential solutions yet to develop. How did you deal with this challenge when you started your companies?
Okay, so this some of it is a matter of domain knowledge. So let's say you are in an industry that you already know and you have a good knowledge of the industry, then it's easier for you to go and spot where are the opportunities. So for me, for example, when I started my first company, I was in the semiconductor industry all my life, and I saw the opportunities based on my work experience and so on, and so I could spot it easily, I did not test customers. In fact, I was not allowed. I was working in Texas Instruments. If I go and talk to customers, I would be fired, for moonlighting, right? So I did not. But I as a matter of judgment, I saw these, and I only started talking to customers after I left and I started my company. So if you have domain knowledge, the best area to get into for any one of us is an area where you have very good domain knowledge. But if you don't have a domain knowledge, you have a good idea and you want to do something. This is where we have programs like the Lean Launchpad program. And this is something that Steve Blank, in my slide, I talked about this guy, Steve Blank, talk about the lean startup process, where you don't develop the product, you don't do it, but you start interviewing customers. You do a survey of your customers. And it's a very structured process where you can gather enough information for you to now know what are the customers really looking for. And so you always start by what problem are you solving? Not what I have, but what problems do the customer want to be solved? And what is that problem that you're going to solve? And how are you going to solve the problem? Once you understand that, you can then talk about your product or service in a conceptual form, not even a prototype. In the conceptual form, talk to a few potential customers who could be early adopters and ask them whether, if let's say there's something like this, will it fit what you do? And then when you feel that you can do it, the next step is to go and build a prototype. Don't spend millions of dollars building the final product. Build a simple prototype to test the market first. Get the feedback, then you modify, you iterate a few times, pivot, and then you do the final product. So it's a very structured process. I suggest you all look out for this program called the Lean Launchpad program. NUS does it, NTU does it, and I think it can be available other places also. It's a very structured program that can help us solve this problem.
Thank you so much. Any other questions?
We have some more in the chat. Yeah, Jay.
Wait.
I saw one down here from Malim about when do you know when to give up? It's a very interesting question, but it's a matter of judgment. Sometimes we give up too early. Success may be around the corner, but sometimes we have gone so far down the path that that is going to cost too much. A failure is going to cost too much, and you have to make it. It's actually a very difficult question to answer. A lot of it has got to feel of how much feel you have of what the real situation is on the ground. I mentioned keep your ears close to the ground. That I do in the university is about how to survive challenging times. And I did some research on how did some companies, mainly big companies, how did they survive the Great Depression of 1929? And it was very interesting that many of them who had very ears close to the ground. They knew what the customers wanted. And I think the best way is if you cannot get a good feel of what the customer wants and you are not getting any closer to the customer, I think that is your gauge that it's time. Maybe it's not going to work. And at the end of the day, it's going to be a matter of judgment with a bit of experience. I have a chapter in a book that I wrote, The Art and Science of Entrepreneurship, where I call thinking with the heart and not with the head. So this is like a bit of a gut feel, rather than sometimes all the decisions an entrepreneur make do not seem logical to others. They seem like some form of fuzzy logic. It was a matter of judgment. So I think it's a balancing of these two, thinking with your heart and your head, and then coming up with the best solution. And sometimes if you cannot make the judgment, it's good to talk to a few more people, a few more customers before you make. But again, it's a very tough judgment. Sometimes you give up and then suddenly, actually, if you had taken a bit longer, you could have seen success. But sometimes you would have run out of money, and anyway, you're forced to give up because you've got no more money and no one is pumping money into you. So it's not a clear answer, but it's a matter of judgment.
Yeah. Okay, let me ask a question to Prof. Inderjit. Our education system, does not seem to be nurturing entrepreneurship. Students are trained to follow systems and score well academically. Is there a shift of our education system that needs to happen to catch up with the times and to be relevant as well?
Yeah. So this has got to do about what I said earlier on about the when we give people second chances in the education system, then I think you are not so kanchiong. Singaporeans, you're not so panicky, that, I must make it the first time. So I think that is really a big psychological thing. But I think, of course, the biggest culprit is still the government, in the sense that if you look at how they select scholars, like it's all purely on academic results, and everyone thinks about getting good grades. And as long as the government does not change this, I think we're going to be stuck with this kind of system. But I think I'm glad to know that recently, if you notice, during the debate in Parliament, during the President address, Chan Chun Sing talked about it, and a few ministers talked about it, about new definition of meritocracy and so on. So they have not decided what it is, but I think we must recognize that success is measured in many ways, and not just in academic ways. So once they figure that out, then I think the education system will be modified. One thing, of course, that we have seen, at least at the university level, if you look at the system that we have put in place in NUS, SMU, even NTU, is that the modular system, the continuous assessment system, and many of these things are now starting to play a more important role than just doing very well at the end of the one final exam that was during my time. So I think uh, it is hard to give up something that's worked in the past, but at the same time, what worked in the past may not work in the future. We must start giving some of these things up. It's a balance that the government needs to find the right answer to. But I would say, as an individual, when I did my university education, I was not fully focused on getting the top grades. I did all those things. I was a student leader. I did many things, and I mean, I did okay. I was not first class honor. I still got second class lower honors. I still got my honors, but I did many. So I turned out to be an all-rounded fellow. So it's your choice, right? So I think if let's say you want to do that, and I think I did okay. I mean, I'm happy with what I've done. Even in Texas Instruments, working in in multinational, I did okay. So it's got to do with government changing, got to do with us also changing.
I would ask another question. Do you think our system in Singapore supports entrepreneurs who embrace failure and to start again? It seems very hard, and often the failing could mean bankruptcy or losing quite a bit of your assets.
Yeah.
And that deters many people from actually starting, even though they have a great dream of what they want to do. Yeah.
Yeah. So actually, this is something that many years I addressed in Parliament. Even when I was overseeing Ministry for Trade, Industry, and Finance to help entrepreneurs. But I also did address the Ministry of Law in modifying bankruptcy law, and I basically argued that if let's say the cost of failure is so high, you're going to go bankrupt and coming back is going to be very difficult. People will not try. So we must make it not so onerous to go bankrupt. And Singapore is expensive. Right? I mean, now I'm still running my businesses and I still sign personal guarantees with bank. The cost of failure actually is going to be really very high, and I think it's going to be tough, especially when you got families and so on to support. But I think on the other side of things, if you look at the many of our young are starting to take the entrepreneurial journey, many of them, and they've got a family support. They got parent support, which meant, like, for example, when I did not have when I started, right? The family did not have, but I think now we have at least some form of family support that's coming in, that people are getting a braver. But I think the other thing also is that sometimes it's out of necessity. Right now, PMETs are facing a very big challenge of jobs, and together the government has launched the venture building program, where you can come up with idea. We support you with 1,500 salary per month for 3 months, and then you're okay. You get 10,000. We give you $50,000. The startup founder thing, and we want to support the ideas. And the universities are providing the coaching, all the lessons, the Lean Launchpad program, and so on. So we are trying to help, help change through some of these things. So system is slowly changing, moving in the right direction. And I think the cost of failure is something that we must address. Cost of living is very high. I lose my house. I don't know how I'm going to own my next house again. We have to settle these things. I actually think that we are heading in a wrong direction in terms of real estate costs, driven mainly by foreigners. I spoke about many times. I keep on talking about it, that we should not allow it to happen. Even our HDB prices are not cheap anymore. We should halve the price, but that will affect the whole banking market. So I don't know how we're going to do. We're in trouble already. So
my feel to that is instead of bringing the price down, I think we should do more high value work, engage Singaporeans in high value work, and increase their spending power and their ability to grow.
You see, but this has to be. This is something that you are chasing it all the time. Can you believe it that I think it's almost maybe 15 years ago when I addressed this issue with very high level in the ministry, and I say you must drop the prices. Then we had a conversation, or how can you drop people the bank? I said I agree with you can't drop, but this is 15 years ago. I said that in that case you please control your rise of property prices so that they don't run away. So that in 15 to 20 years it should be where our wages can support. That also, I think the government failed to do, and so we are facing this problem of we can't afford. I mean, basically, so high value is definitely the way to go. Higher salaries, but the higher salaries cannot always be chasing a higher, even higher increasing property price. There's no end to that. That's no one. So therefore, the challenge for government is creating still now good value job. And I mentioned the region is moving. If you're not careful, some cities around us will overtake us, and we won't be able to create those jobs. So I think the government needs to come up with a good strategy, working with the private sector on what are the good jobs, what are the good sectors that we need to focus on. I did an article on the prototyping factory of the world, if not prototyping factory of region. We have so much of technology. We have spent $61 billion in the last 20 years in the R&D, but we are not commercializing. And many of these are actually could be commercialized if we put a bit more money to commercialize. So we can do that. Then we can, engineers especially, right? We will have, prototyping in Singapore that can then do mass production in other parts of the world, like China or wherever. Can it be done? My third company, Infinity Solution, was a prototyping facility, not in Singapore, but in Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley was expensive, but we were successful in doing prototyping from there. So I'm sure Singapore, we can do that also.
We can. Indeed, I agree with you. We have done a lot of investment into technology, and now it's up to the engineers, technopreneurs to bring it from lab into prototyping into market as well. Yeah. Yes. Okay, Hong Jie, next question.
Yeah. Yes, we have another question. How many times did you fail at starting up something before you had a success?
Okay, I tell you, my startups, UTech was successful, but I had to leave UTech after some time because I had difficulty with the board members who wanted to do something wrong, but I did not want to participate in something wrong, being my fiduciary duty. So the company anyway is very successful. Then I started TriStar with my brothers. That's still running okay. Then Infinity Solution actually did well, and then we did a trade sale and we exited. So these were the ones that I started and ran myself. I started another one with a Nigerian professor. He's a Singapore PR in the area of medical technology. And so it's a transdermal delivery of medicine. Very successful. I was a chairman of the board for 15 years. I left the board. It's still there, but it's not become successful. It's got the potential, but I just don't have time to focus on it. Then I've actually invested in many companies. I invested in an IC design company, Singapore-based, lost a lot of money and failed. I did not run it. There were other entrepreneurs, but invested. So most of my experience has been based on those that I ran myself. I'm very fortunate. All my are successful. I've not failed on that. Those that I invested, I did not spend time on. Many of them failed actually. I did one spin-off in 3 years ago in the area of cybersecurity, a research done in NTU by some professors. It's a great company. I'm actually managing it as an executive chairman, and I've got the professors as a technical people, and also day-to-day running. This could be a unicorn, and so I'm still running it. It's not failed yet. I hope it does not fail. I hope it becomes a unicorn. And I'm about to spin off one more company in the graphene technology very soon, in the next few months, and I'm going to run it also. So far, I would say UTech, which is my most well-known startup, is a fairy tale startup. It was really amazing startup, and but I failed in a lot of other investments that I made.
It was interesting for UTech. You could not find funding in Singapore, even though the potential was so huge. I think many of the entrepreneurs here in this meeting also found difficulty in raising funds, especially for big tech engineering.
Yeah.
And do you think you have some advice for us on how we can reposition ourselves, or just forget about funds in Singapore, look for overseas?
Yeah. So I would say that don't just depend on Singapore funds. Please look, because there's a lot of global investors who are willing to invest, especially in NTU. We have about almost 30,000 alumni who are from China, and they are very aggressive, and they got the money and they're willing to invest. And so I would welcome money from any part of the world who's willing to invest in our company. So I went to Taiwan. This is 1996. I went to Taiwan and I got my money at that time. And you're right. I've seen, and I continue to visit our startups that spin off from NTU. And they still have faced the same problem. I just came across one example where this guy is a very good robotic surgery company, have done many years, about to get the CE mark, about to go to Series A, looking for 25 million. None of the Singapore investors, including our big government-owned funds, say, oh, it's too early. Guess what? This guy got 3 term sheets of 25 million, one from China, one from US, one from Japan, but no Singaporean wanted to invest in this company. And I got many examples. And so until today, we face this problem of a lot of money that is sitting along the government fund, but they are not funding the local entrepreneurs as much as they should. So I've made a lot of noise about this. I still continue to write about it. And I think there is some movement that's happening, some change that's coming of these funds that are mainly sitting in Temasek that are repositioning to do more venture build than to just fund foreign companies. So don't give up. But in the meantime, don't wait also. Look for money from any part of the world. At the same time, if you're a startup, your startup should not be Singapore focused only. You must be global right from day one. If it's just a Singapore focused company, you won't go far.
Okay.
I got another question. Are you involved in any way with the recent successful IPO or of nanofilm?
Yes and no. Yes, in the sense that nanofilm is a spin-off from NTU, a professor from our engineering school. And we funded that company. When I say we had a company called NTU Ventures. Now it's called Ntuitive. So I'm chairman of Ntuitive. Before that, I was overseeing all the entrepreneurship activities when NTU Ventures was still there. So we licensed the technology and we funded about 200,000 US dollars. We funded in the initial stages to get them going. So answer is yes. In Ntuitive, we continue to do this. I just mentioned the robotic surgery, and there's another 20 companies like that we have put around $250,000 to $500,000 investment to get them off the ground. So nanofilm got the similar support, not from Ntuitive, but its predecessor called NTU Ventures. We actually sold our share and got 6 million back for 200,000 that we put in earlier on. One of our charters in the university in Ntuitive is not to make a lot of money. We want to help companies get started. We can recover, so we don't wait until the end. And so yes, the unit in NTU did have a lot to do with their startup, and they are quite grateful about it also.
Okay. Any other questions? Andy, you have any?
Yeah, I maybe have a proposition for Prof. Inderjit to consider. We are thinking of starting, there's this PCP program that converts people in one industry to another. We were thinking of having something like that can support PMETs who are domain knowledge or experts in management or in their career, but to switch into entrepreneurship or technopreneurship to start their own companies to tap on the research that's being done to commercialize them. We know there's the BB program, but I think 1,500 for professionals, very hard to survive on that. Yeah. Do you think it will be a good program that we can run on that? Yeah.
I think it's a good program. Now, currently the VB done by the universities, I think this can be taken up. For example, you could do it also at INCA. And I'm sure Enterprise Singapore is willing to support. So whether it's 1,500 or 1,500 plus funding from somewhere else to keep it going for a while. And then I think what is important is I mentioned in my talk the teams, right? Sometimes the engineer will need to partner with someone else with another domain, management or finance. And I think we could do things like this to form those teams. Now, if they can find jobs, they are more comfortable with working, that's fine. But I think we're going to go through an era where that's going to be extremely tough to do. And there's lots of technology that's sitting in many places, in the universities, in A-Star and so on. I think it will be a good idea for someone like IES INCA to start looking at this, bring engineers and then bring partners from other PMETs who can join, and then find a way to help commercialize. And and I think I understand the RIE 2025 is coming up very soon. And I wrote about this, right, that why don't we allocate some money instead of just doing research, bring it to the innovation part, which is formation of companies, commercialization. And I think the government is going to do that. This next 2025 plan, which they'll announce in January, they will be putting money more for the innovation portion. And so we may be able to find money to bring these things together, commercialize. So start thinking about the model, and I think money will be there soon.
Yeah, I think slowly evolving in that area, which is good. Yeah. Okay. Maybe Prof. Inderjit would like to just do a quick wrap up for us. Yeah. Just some key pointers for us, for the entrepreneurs to go back with. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I think I just want to say that there the opportunities, there are two types. One is out of necessity. Like now in this environment, you have to do something. Okay, when that happens, and in fact, when you look at the entrepreneurship measure, how successful countries are around the world, the GEM measure that we used to use to measure, many of the ones that had many entrepreneurs inclination were the emerging countries where they did not have industries, they did not have jobs, and they were forced to think about being entrepreneurs. So that's necessity. But I think the other part of entrepreneurship is going to be when you look at market opportunities. That especially now, I mentioned I started my companies in bad times. Whether it was TriStar, Asian financial crisis, or UTech after also Asian financial crisis and semiconductor meltdown. I saw opportunity at that point of time. So I would say that we can look at this COVID situation as a big problem, or also look at it as an opportunity. I see that the supply chains around the world are going to have a completely realignment. Sole dependence on China as a factory of the world is gone. It's not going to work for long. Second thing is countries like Singapore who think that manufacturing is not viable. In the past, we are right, but now we are wrong, because with robotics, with technology, with automation, with vertical farming, we have enough technology today to make some of the things that we think that are not viable again. So because there's going to be this complete realignment of the global supply chains, I think there will be tremendous opportunities in all areas, whether it's digital, education, whether it's manufacturing of the future, prototyping, whether it's services. This will be an opportunity for all of us to look at our domain knowledge, marry with whatever technology we can find, and then get together with a good team and spot the opportunities, not just in Singapore, in the region, but also globally. Those of us who spot it first and apply some of the knowledge and the skill sets that we have and get the support that we can get, we will be the winners in the next. There were many in the Great Depression of 2029. There were many survivors, but many failures also. But guess what? There were many newcomers that saw the opportunities. And I went back to check. 100 years later, the newcomers who came during the Depression are still around today. Those started, I've analyzed 10 companies and they're still around. So the strong companies normally start in the worst of times, not in the best of times. So this is not a bad time for starting a company. Do it right. We have the support structure is really good right now compared to the past. And I think, and also don't despair about jobs. I think look for opportunities that can help us create the future economy of Singapore.
Thank you, Inderjit. Thank you so much for your time and the valuable sharing and insights. And I will be wrapping up. And thanks everyone for joining us today. If you have further questions, no worries. We will send a post-event email with the info from today's event. For information, we have 3 upcoming courses that you may be interested in. One is on 19th of November about critical thinking for technopreneurs. One is on 20th of November on launching your tech venture successfully. And one on 2nd of December on understanding and applying business strategy in a complex world. From the post-event email, you will see more information about the upcoming courses and events. Okay, that's all about our upcoming activities. Thank you again for joining our events today. See you next time. Inderjit, can we take a picture with Andy?
Yeah, go ahead. I'm here.
Okay, so just smile at the camera. Thank you. Okay. Okay. Sorry, wait a minute. Okay, sorry. One more time. Sorry. Okay. Okay. Okay, got that. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thank you,
See you all.
everyone.
Inderjit, thank you very much for your time and your sharing. Have a good evening, everybody. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.